My daughter pointed to my high school graduation picture and asked me who the best-looking boy in it was. I paused for a few seconds. It's someone Mommy has liked for years. Why don't you guys get married? Because he always liked girls prettier than me. The year I got entangled in the most desperate situation, I chose to get married in order to make him regret it. Then I realized that I could also fall in love with someone else. The end of that school day in the office helping the teacher correct papers was all I could think about. I'm dead. Liam must have left early. All semester long, I'd sneak up behind him and pretend to go home with him. I told myself, one day I won't be able to keep up. I wouldn't like him anymore. In the corridor, the cleaning students had left. I lost my way back to the classroom, only to see Liam alone, sitting in my seat, flipping through a book he had taken with him. I asked, "Why haven't you left yet?" I hadn't spoken to him more than 3 sentences before this. "Waiting for you, silly," he said. I think he probably likes me a little. He was always late, carrying buns and soy milk into class and putting them on my desk before the homeroom teacher arrived. At the end of the varsity basketball game, he crossed the crowd just to come and ask me, "Amanda, who were you just looking at?" He'd bring his cell phone to school and put his headphones in for me to listen to my idol's new album during study hall. But he would, too, come back from a summer vacation and suddenly alienate me. Until one gym class, when I bumped into him and a pretty new transfer student in a classroom with just the 2 of them. "They'll be seen. You don't want to?" He trailed off, his usual badassery. The transfer student pouts and pushes him, "Liam, you're so annoying." There was a private discussion. "Liam's changed, so soon? You don't see how pretty this one is, that Amanda before was dark and plain looking." Men are visual creatures. When I filled out my college entrance exams, Liam was guaranteed a place in the top one in the north, and I filled out a place in the University of Southern California, which is the furthest away from him. After graduation, we went our separate ways. I didn't even add him on Facebook. On the hottest afternoon of my sophomore year, I finished my classes and watched a drama in my dorm room. When my roommate came back from a date, he shouted excitedly, "Shit, did you guys see that? There's a super handsome guy standing downstairs. I don't know who he's waiting for." "Is he from our college?" "No, I've never seen him before." They crowded in front of the window and dragged me down to look. I poked my head out and saw Liam surrounded by people. He looked up at me with his hands in his pockets, smiling. I showed him around our school and the night market as a regular high school classmate. "When are you going back?" Passing through the underpass, the cacophony of rollerbladers and guitar-clutching singers drowned out my voice a few times. But he still heard me. "Early morning flight." "You're in a hurry?" "Well, there's an early 8 tomorrow." I walked in front of him, and he walked behind me. A few guys from my department said hi to me. Walking up the steps, under the streetlight, Liam held my hand. I turn my head and he hooks my ring finger and asks, "Amanda, don't you ever miss me?" He always does. Showing up out of nowhere when I was already about to give up. Throughout the first semester of my junior year, Liam and I chatted every day, separated by more than 2,000 kilometers. He said that the washing machine in the dorm was broken and we had to wait in line for a long time for hot water. I said I had a lot of classes today and wouldn't be able to talk to him on the phone until later. "Well," he said with a smile in his voice, "it's not like he hasn't waited for you before." I waited for class to end, watching the clock on the wall. "Nearly, going to the cafeteria?" "No, you guys go ahead," I headed out, clutching my textbook. "I'm going back to my dorm first." I followed the crowd of people as I trudged down the stairs. All I could think about was the same face. "Amanda." Until a nice voice called my name. In front of the crowded entrance of the 3rd school building, the person I had been thinking about was standing there. The one, Liam, who said he'd wait for my call. The plane tickets he came to see me on during the year were enough to pay my tuition for 4 years. Everyone thought I had a rich, loser, and extremely clingy handsome boyfriend. Sometimes I wondered if Liam's love had any boundaries. The afternoon of the end of the junior high school, I finished the exam in the rain to run back to the dormitory, holding headphones in the corridor and his phone. Downstairs, it was a couple in front of the dormitory who were having a hard time parting ways. In his ear, Liam said he had something to tell me. "Amanda, I have a crush." He says that since I'm his best friend, I'm the first one he tells. He shows me pictures of girls. "She's pretty." It's his usual favorite, a little mixed-race looking girl. Liam, friends don't hold hands. I blackmailed him. It was a clean break, and he never looked for me again. He didn't seem at all upset that I'd left. Not at all. I began to retaliate with a vengeance, by falling into a state of look anxiety. Whitening and makeup, doing everything I could to look better. I couldn't begin to tell if it was to make him regret it. Or whether it was for the group of boys in high school who said that Amanda is dark and plain looking. Just like I couldn't tell. Whether it was because I really liked him after all these years, or because I was always unchosen. Later, I did run into him at a party. There was no unexpected lightening up, he was very, very bland. We didn't have a conversation or look at each other the whole time. Only when I left the party early, a former high school boyfriend stopped me at the stairway. He wanted to add me on Facebook. "Can I give you a ride home?" he said, going to his car. I politely declined. I was wearing a short skirt and white boots in the dead of winter, and the wind was ruffling my hair. After the man left, I pulled my scarf out of my bag and turned my head. Liam is standing on the steps looking at me. Looked at me for a long time. "Don't add him." His voice was slightly deep, not a nice guy. They say Liam's relationships don't last, but I'm an exception. I wasn't a friend, I wasn't a lover. But I stayed by his side for years. Tangled up. He took up all of my hapless youth, and I woke up to realize that I was at an age where I would be urged to marry him. But he wasn't the one who would marry me. Liam had heard the marriage reminders from my mom. He also knew that I was arranged to go on blind dates with other people. But he didn't care. He buried himself in the crook of my neck, sniffed my hair, and easily said, "I'll marry you." "Do you love me?" I asked him. He paused in his movements, "We're right for each other." I looked at him without moving. "We've known each other for so long, we know each other," he said with a smile. "I'll marry you when I'm 35 and can't find anyone I like." I stopped talking. "Angry?" He coaxed me, "You've liked me for years, isn't this what you want?" So he knew all about it. I just felt ridiculous. He believed that if he hooked his hand, I would definitely come back to him. Just like I also believe that people with broken hearts will really let go when they say they will. So, after so many years, he finally returned to his prodigal son and said he wanted to marry me the next day. I turned around and left without a word. I took out my student visa and left the country. 6 years later, private clubhouse. As I came out of the restroom, someone recognized me in the acacia tree-filled back porch. "Amanda?" I looked back and saw a group of familiar-looking classmates. And Liam in the middle of the crowd. His eyebrows were deep and sharp, and he couldn't hide them any longer. He looked at me quietly. After I left, he didn't go crazy looking for me, nor did he have a hangover. Instead, he started his own successful business and is about to go public. "You've really come back to China. I heard your family went bankrupt," they asked me. "Why are you here? Can you afford it? You're not married, are you? You're not back to get back together with Zay, are you?" Someone joked. The woman next to Liam overheard them, and she clutched Liam's wrist and looked at me with hostility. Not far away, my daughter ran over and hugged my calf. "Mommy." The crowd looks at my daughter wide-eyed. She looks a lot like Liam. "You're having a baby, aren't you?" Someone reacted, subconsciously looking at Liam. How do they look like you?" My daughter blinks and follows, staring up at his face. "Ah, Mom, that's your beautiful brother in the picture." I picked her up and turned to leave. Only to have Liam tug on my hand. "Mine?" he asked me. I was about to say something. Behind me, a group of VIPs approached. The private club is owned by the Liu family, and among the bigwigs meeting tonight is the new head of the Liu family. Liam's brother, Noah. He passed by us, surrounded by his flock. "Daddy." My daughter called out crisply. The group stopped in their tracks. My daughter reaches out her hand, and under the gaze of the crowd, she shouts again, "Daddy, give me a hug." Noah glanced up at the sound of her voice, his eyes flickering. Before we returned home, we were in a cold war. He didn't know I'd brought my daughter back. "I haven't heard that this one is married, huh? She can't even handle Z, let alone his brother, definitely not." The woman next to Liam snickered. "Kids, don't call anyone names when you see them and climb up the ladder." She pointed at my nose, eager to show off in front of the Liu family. "How did you teach her?" My daughter is only 5 years old, but she understands. Little hands clutched my shirt. 6'1". Noah called out his daughter's nickname. He's a long man, and he takes her from my arms with one hand. Go back to the car and wait for me, he said to me, not looking at Liam the whole time. I nodded and followed his assistant, leaving a group of people behind who were both shocked and afraid to ask questions. Congratulations, a great niece. Someone rounded up the crowd and tried to kiss Liam's ass. It's normal for a niece to look like a brother-in-law, it's a good thing. Liam's face became more and more ugly as they said one sentence after another. The woman beside him was quick to comfort him. I've seen a lot of women like this, they don't really love you. Just bent on marrying into the Liu family, when you can't do it, you'll replace your brother. Liam narrowed his gaze and pinched the woman's chin. You want to marry into the Liu family just by giving birth to a child, you're daydreaming. He laughed, you don't have the ability to do that, and she has even less. Mr. Liu asked me to pick you up. The Luke's car pulls up in front of me in front of the front lobby. I opened the door and sat in the back. There was someone in the back seat, and I assumed it was Noah and said in my habitual petulant way, don't be mad at me, But then I realized it was Liam, caught in the dim light. What, he said, propping his head up, what you did to me before, you're doing to my brother now. I didn't answer. I turned my head to get out of the car, but the door was locked. You get off, he said to the driver. Open the door, I said coldly, or I'll call the police. He laughed softly, just a little chat, don't worry, I'm not interested in what other people have touched. I pulled out my cell phone and called Noah. He was quick on his feet, clutched my wrist and pinched the phone straight away. So you're his what? He shook my hand off, lover? Long term or short term? My wrist went red in a circle. You didn't want to get married back then, you could leave if you wanted to. Liam's tone remained light. And now you turn around and give him children without a name? What did he give you? Bags, jewelry, houses, money? Amanda, you didn't ask for any of this when you were with me. I looked up and asked him, when were we ever together? Looking back, I can't even talk about the spare tire. Liam, I like him. I was very honest, really like him, more than I liked you back then. His eyes were hard, but for a moment, they were clear again. I'm doing this for your own good, he said, I'm just trying to talk you out of it because you're a friend and you're not doing as well as you'd like. Liam inclined his head, Noah's no good. He's fine, I said without hesitation. Liam laughed in anger, and couldn't help but sound a little anxious. You don't have to do that just to spite me. He looked over at me, still thinking he could see right through me. You get someone else, someone who suits you. He spoke slowly, if there's no one suitable, I can introduce you. I looked at him. I'm married to your brother. I'm his wife, your sister-in-law. He stared at me and laughed for no reason. How old are you? Don't you know your own condition? Is he likely to marry you? He spoke extremely softly. To put it mildly, he'll pick up what I didn't even ask for? I slapped him across the face, knocking him off his feet. Then he raised his hand to wipe the corners of his lips. He laughed even harder. I owe you, he said, it's clean. The car unlocked. Without a moment's hesitation, I turned my head and got out. Amanda. He pulls down the window and peeks out. The wind was blowing his short hair. Still the spoiled, uncaring look of the girls who chased him when he was a teenager. It's okay to fool others, don't fool yourself. It's not worth it. You're not young anymore. It's time to face reality. Reality. I'm broke, average-looking, not young. I don't have an advantage in the dating market. Liam's group of brothers said I was lucky to have him. When I spent all my savings to study abroad, I thought it would be hard to forget him. But in fact, when people are in desperate need of money, all they can think about is making money. During the gap of internship, occasionally, I saw someone posting Liam's photo. He's got a new girlfriend. This one has been talking for a long time. Everyone said she took him down. When I was young, I loved someone with all my might, but in the end, it was a joke. So much so that later on, I no longer had the strength to love anyone else and decided that I would never be loved again. Just by what right, he was so dashing. I was the only one who was hurt. That winter in graduate school, I saw a Chinese face that looked like Liam's on the Alumni Association's Wall of Honor. His features were deep, his bone structure was superior, and his coldness was even greater. Caught in the photo, not much patience, eyebrows and eyes born of the nobility elusive. Like Liam, but not quite. He donated a building to the school. Seeing me staring for a long time, the teaching assistant said to me with a smile, "None of the people who chased him back then were successful." "What was his name?" I asked. "Noah. Liam's most hated half-brother. His father was rich from his father-in-law and cheated on him when he had money. Married Liam's mom. He has to let me have it whenever I want it. Liam once took me to his family's vacation home, and that was the first time he mentioned Noah. Noah had an almost 10-year-old dog that had been with him for years. I said I wanted it, and my dad gave it to me. Noah wouldn't have it, so my dad beat him up. He pointed to the shallow crater in the doorframe, until he hit his head so hard, his face was bloody and he wouldn't let go of the dog. What happened then? I asked him. Of course it was mine, but I didn't really like it much, he said boredly. Noah came back from a week in the hospital to find I'd given the dog away. I grimaced. Heartbroken? He's not one to be messed with. Liam broke my face, forbidding me to think any more. He always hated it when I had extra attention from other men. Especially about Noah. So in the beginning, I approached Noah on purpose. The day of the alumni meeting was the end of the rainy season. My heels broke and I was cluelessly hiding from the rain in my dress. Just as his fancy car passed by, he asked the driver to hand me an umbrella, and I asked him if he could get in and give me a ride. All the way to his hotel. I'm not very experienced. Sitting on his body half a day, cannot unbutton his shirt, touching a pass. He finally relented and took my hand away, smiling low. What do you want? He recognized me. The professor appreciated me and had recommended me to him a few weeks ago. That's why he'd watched me patiently all the way through the play. I know you hate your brother. I looked up at him, me too. He was smart. Probably guessed that Liam and I had a fling. I want him to regret it. I said cleanly what I was trying to do. He'd better see that I'm super good with you and start crying and begging me to come back to him. I want to prove that I'll live 1,000,000 times better than him. And then what? He looked away. You forgive him and start over? No, I didn't. I didn't know what I wanted. It's like I'm stuck in a rut, desperately trying to prove something. But I know from the bottom of my heart that Liam doesn't love me. So whoever I loved, he wouldn't care. I picked up my clothes, got up, and told Noah, I'm sorry. I loathe myself for this. The city blues at night under the bus stop sign. I waited for 10 minutes. Only to realize that a strike had stopped the buses. Noah's car pulls up in front of me. He didn't show up, merely asking the driver to take me back out of courtesy. Before getting off the bus, the driver called out to me. Mr. Luck wants me to talk to you. Liam sucks, you're fine, don't get hurt over someone who doesn't deserve it. I thought, Noah is so gentle. But people from two worlds will never cross paths again. At least, that's what I thought at the time. New Year's Eve. I'm accompanying my roommate on a ski trip to Snowmass in order to earn money for my flight home. You know why I asked you to come? My roommate took my hand. I want to chase my senior. His family is huge. It's just perfect to set me off with you. The senior was indeed very enthusiastic about her. I thought all friends of pretty girls were pretty girls, but it seems they're not all pretty girls, he said. He warmed up by poking fun at me. Don't mind if I'm blunt, he smiled at my roommate and said to me, you're not as good looking as she is, so you don't have a date, do you? She's not. My roommate replied. The two of them laughed and joked as they walked to the private snow park. Wow, does this belong to your family? It's getting late, and a warm moon hangs in the powder blue sky. In the white snow. I looked over and saw the Liu family's car. My dad manages it for the owner of the snow park. He points to a car not far away. Nah, know who he is? My roommate shook her head. The senior whispered a name in her ear and she covered her mouth in shock. Can we go say hi to him? You can't just meet him. Halfway up the hill, the senior slapped his head. I forgot, the weather has been bad for the past 2 days, and the highway will be closed. My roommate refused and insisted on going up. I just want to take pictures and send them to my friends, so I can't come here for nothing. Okay, I'll just go up and have a look. The seniors took her with them, but I didn't want to go up, so they threw their stuff at me and told me to wait for them to come down. I waited for almost an hour. I wanted to go down the mountain with my stuff on my back. But I met an avalanche in the middle of the way. Later, I realized that they went down in the gondola as soon as they reached the senior road and saw that it was going to change, but they forgot about me. There was a flash of white in front of my eyes as the snow covered the area. Dying. I didn't realize I was going to end up dying alone in a foreign country. I thought of my dad. He used to take me skiing when I was little. But he's been gone for years. I think of my mom again. But after she remarried, she had her own son, and she was afraid that her son's husband would be unhappy, so she asked me not to go to her house next time. Then I met Liam again. I thought if I treated him with all my might, he would treat me slightly better. To think that in the end. Not a single person. It's good to die alone then, at least the sunset was beautiful today. Amanda. I was fuzzy, but I heard someone calling my name over and over again. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. With all my strength, I pulled the bell on my backpack. Amanda. A pair of hands scooped me out of the snow. It's okay, good girl. He said, hold me. Leaning against his back, he puts his ski jacket on me. So warm. Life after the robbery. One can't tell if it's a dream or reality. Just endless aftermath, tears dripping and falling on the back of his neck. He stepped on his feet and asked me, still scared? I recognized him as Noah. The Noah I'd only met once, the Noah who wasn't from the same world as me. I said in a muffled voice. I'm not asking Liam to regret coming to me, I just don't understand why it's so hard to love someone. I'm just scared. I'm afraid that no one will ever love me in my life. Silence. So quiet that I almost fell asleep again. He gently put me down, good boy, don't fall asleep. The sound of the helicopter is getting closer. I leaned against his chest. He exhales white air between gasps and takes off his goggles with one hand to look at me. Such pretty eyes. Compelling. Amanda, come love me, he says. I woke up after 2 days of burning. In his villa. The still lake was frozen over and the moonlight was deep blue. He coughed a few times, and when he reached out to probe my forehead, he found me looking at him with my eyes open. Is it still hard? He asked. I shook my head. He said to rest up and a private jet would take me back to school. What about you? I asked. I'm leaving. He says, it's already half an hour late. I pulled him back. He lowered his eyes and looked at me. Do you know what this means? He asked. No. He let me have my way. I can't hold my breath and I'm about to slide down and he holds me up. Noah inclines his face and lets out a soft laugh. How come you still can't learn? I'd forgotten that the more restrained and disciplined a person is, the more extreme they can be. When indulging in love and lust pours out, it knows no bounds. Noah is so bad. He's done everything, and when people are at their worst, he has to ask, would it be too much of a bully? I make a move to push him away. He laughed and held my hand. In the early hours of that morning, the many days of snow stopped. He said as naturally as he had called me for breakfast, let's get married. I bounced out of bed with a carp. You don't have to answer to me, I waved my hand, no, I mean, this is the kind of thing you do. You're responsible for me. His dark hair is extra soft in the daylight, it's my first time. He took me to see his mother. The car drove through a cluster of century-old buildings in the center of town, and I pointed out, I used to wonder what kind of people lived in them. He took my hand. Then you get to see it today. His mother was gentle. She gave me a lot of things. No, I asked Noah, holding the emerald bracelet with mixed feelings as I exited the house, if we break up, do I have to give it back? You don't have to. He had no choice but to nudge my head, open the car door and shove me inside. The wedding was grand. I looked at the extra zeros in my bank card balance and felt even less real about the fact that I was Noah's wife. My roommate didn't believe the news of my marriage. After asking around and confirming the truth, he blackballed me. The seniors did call me and said a bunch of bah humbug. He'd lost his family's credentials to manage the snow park because he'd brought in people in violation of the rules. To be honest, he grumbled a bit, you were responsible for what happened back then. Don't mind if I'm blunt, I advised him sincerely, you know what men like so well, so go do something that makes them happy. He couldn't say anything and hung up the phone. I found out I was pregnant in the 3rd month of my marriage. I was busy with my graduation and internship. Before I left work, I didn't forget to use the restroom one more time. I bled. I didn't think much about it and pedaled my bike to the hospital by myself. I drew a dozen tubes of blood and was dizzy. The doctor said that I need to be hospitalized to keep the baby. Any family members? I just remembered that I have a Noah. He'd arrived on an early morning flight from the West Coast with his coat. I giggled and waved. What are you smiling about? His voice was soft, but his eyebrows were a little angry. It's good to see you, I said. One word and he wasn't angry anymore. Noah sighs and crouches down in front of me, his head resting against my knee. Panting. He said, you depend on me too. I stroked his hair. The spikes are short and soft, with the moisture of early spring. The 5th year after giving birth to 6-1. The party. Noah stood on the second floor railing, looking down at the infinity pool. People on the poolside, chatting about domestic gossip. There's a woman who's been in love with Liam for almost 10 years. She's very infatuated. In the end, she left without saying a word or anything. Noah listened, his hand pouring whiskey. Someone asked, nothing from Liam? The man who spoke smiled. He threw away all the girls' things the next day. That desperate? That's what everyone says, but guess what? The man raised his eyebrows and continued, he picked it all up again in the middle of the night, found a room to put it in, and is still living in the room she rented before she left the country. No one said anything else. Believe it or not, the man said, as soon as she comes back, Liam will be trapped in a minute. Downstairs the talk changed to another subject. 6-1 went to Noah with his toys in his arms. Daddy. He was slightly startled, and when he turned his head to hug her, he saw me. In the night. Noah asked me, if I wasn't his brother, would you have come to see me on the day of the alumni meeting? I'd be lying if I said I would, I'm honest, but then it was different. Because of the baby? He asked. Because you were nice and I grew to like you. He got up and touched my head. Gentle to a fault, as if he would never be mad at me. It's okay. He said, no need to force yourself to say you love me. It was our first direct clash of emotions. He minded in his heart. I had no way of explaining it. Are you leaving? I asked him, leaning against the door. After too many years of cold violence, I was subconsciously afraid of conflict. Afraid that if he got angry, he'd never come back. No. He crosses to me and locks the door behind him. Ruffles my hair. What's the word, baby? He looked at me and paused. Do hate. Begging for forgiveness was useless. What I usually can't stand the most comes. I couldn't take the force and hit the head of the bed. He reached out to cushion himself and whispered, sorry, did I hurt you? I shook my head and nodded again. Wait, I raised my hand, I want some water. Thirsty. He takes hold of my ankles and rolls me over. I can't say another word. Only the crashing, trying to hold back and spilling remnants. It's a late summer night in the Mediterranean. Dawn breaks. The stars and moon falling into the rippling stillness of the sea. He inclined his head and leaned against the white-screened window to smoke. A few clear scratches on his back. I've never seen him smoke before, he's usually very restrained. He woke up. He got up and brought me water. Amanda. I look up at him. He kisses me on the inside, gentle as can be. He said, if you run back to see him, I'll lock you up. We were cold for 3 days. He went back home for a meeting. I carried the 6-1. Let's go and fetch Daddy home. Getting out of Liam's car. I stood in the wind for a while and called Noah. 10 minutes later, he drove up to pick me up. Where's 6-1? I got in the passenger seat. Fell asleep, sent home. He steered, streams of light floating across the side of his face. Where are we going? I looked expectant, sneak me into a nice dinner? He glanced at me and moved back. No. Find a windy place to lock you up. Noah still takes me to my favorite food. How are you going to lock me up? I finish eating and follow him to the car. He picks up a bag of papers in the back and takes me to the registry section of the police station. Noah gets serious and pulls out a Hague-certified translation. The marital status on my household registration was changed from unmarried to married. I blinked at him. Is this your lockup? He raises an eyebrow. It's the rule of law now. Using the legality of marriage to reduce your likelihood of bigamy, he taps my head, prevents you from having one husband abroad and one husband at home. I silently opened the car door. He reached out, slamming the car door shut. So, you came to see him anyway? No, I missed you. I look up at him, came to take you home, husband. I said, he's so bad, he wants me to take the initiative to make up for the Cold War. He asked, what do you want to make up for? In the eyes of outsiders, Noah is a nobleman raised by an elite education. He would never indulge in an addiction that could not be stopped and could easily make people run out of rules. Nor would he be caught in a passive situation from which he could not extricate himself. But this moment in the parking lot. Inside the car. I cover his mouth and nose. He drops his eyes to look at me. He's stoically calm as the choking sensation spreads. Belly inhalation tightens and stretches, taking me with it up top. Rising and falling. He's about to run out of breath, red-eyed. Overplaying his hand. He reaches up and takes my wrist in his hand, moves away. Raw desire unleashed, his eyes a bone-deep, superior posture. But he had to bow his head. Whispered to me, sister. I had no strength and collapsed into his arms, gasping for air. My cell phone rang, an unfamiliar caller. My hand shook and I pressed connect by mistake. Amanda. Liam's voice was extra clear in the heated car. I checked, Noah's married overseas, you've been cheated. Liam said to himself. You begged me. I can help you get your daughter on the family register. I was shocked and coughed violently. He sensed something strange and asked me, what are you doing? Noah leans back in his chair, raises an eyebrow to help me smooth out my breath, takes the phone, and simply says. She's not available. Liam heard it. Silence for half a minute. Hangs up the phone. The next day, word spread that Liam was getting married. I heard that it was his first high school sweetheart. As I was packing up to leave the country and go home, the class president called me. Come to the reunion, meet the teachers, he said, after all, I don't know when I'll see you next. I agreed. I just didn't expect to run into Liam's first love, Isabella. The pretty transfer student. How many carats? They touched the proposal ring on Isabella's hand. The late arrivals were eager to say hello to her, too, skimming over me and squeezing into my chair. That guy, she calls out to me, move over. Eventually, there's no room, and I yell for the waiter to stuff my chair. Isabella, however, speaks up and tells me to sit next to her. She looks at my bag. Geez, your bag is so old, how many years have you not changed it? The Good Samaritan asks, how much is this one? It's a handmade bag I made with 6-1. It doesn't cost much, I said. It looks like it's only 20 or 30, right? The man wanted to know. Someone else spoke up for me, so what if it is, as long as it works? The man snickered, only people with no money would be so self-congratulatory. As the scene cooled down, Isabella became the good guy. She took my hand, her tone pitiful. It's good enough to live like this. I heard you're single with a baby, you didn't even have a wedding, right? It's a pity that it's hard for you to find another one in your condition. The people around me laughed and agreed. Who can be like you? I couldn't get you at that time. When the show was over, Liam walked into the private room. Everyone thought he wouldn't come. He said he was here to pick up Isabella. My classmates were all compliments and envy, and said their best wishes. I sidled up to the crowd and as I passed him, he took my wrist. Then, letting go. Why don't you take my car back? He asks abruptly, drawing the crowd's eyes together. Where do you live now? Isabella stiffened her smile and took Liam's wrist. Yeah, I'll give you a ride. No, I said, I'll take a cab. Before I could finish my sentence, the drunken male classmate suddenly interjected, no one picked you up. He tried to add me on Facebook. Hey, you didn't like me at the time, but you wanted to climb up the ladder, he sneered, thinking Liam would fall in love with you. That's what you girls do. You get yourselves killed being high and mighty. As he was talking, the car stopped at the entrance. The snow was falling. Noah picks his way up the stairs with an umbrella. I recognized him and ran to him. Don't you have a meeting? It ended early. His presence exploded the scene. Didn't you say she's not married? Who's that guy? I don't know him, but he's handsome. Handsome isn't hungry for food. Liam stared at Noah's hand, which was habitually wrapped around my waist. He spoke languidly, what, are you this attentive to each of your lovers? His words silenced the scene, looking at me with more than a little contempt. Noah raised his hand and punched Liam in the face. Noah didn't use any force. Blood instantly spilled from the corner of Liam's mouth. Noah grabbed his collar and said calmly, "She is your sister-in-law, my legal wife." Liam's eyes tightened and he was stunned. "Married? When did you get married?" 5 years ago. Noah straightened up and wiped the blood from the back of his hand. Liam sniffed and looked over at me. In his eyes was extreme shock and brokenness. "It was only a year. A year for you to forget all about me. Teach me how you did it." Noah blocked his view. "In what capacity are you asking this, X? Are you?" The doorway grew crowded. "What's all the fighting about?" Someone tried to stop them, but was pulled back. "That's Liam's brother, the head of the Liu family." Isabella's face went white. "How can that be? What gives her the right?" But no one answered her. I took Noah's hand and said to the head of the class, "We'll go first." Liam braced himself on the railing and stood up, watching me leave. This time I really didn't look back. Even though his face was covered in blood. I didn't expect to see Liam again. The elevator opened. He was standing in front of the room, having been there for a long time. He didn't even notice the cigarette but burning on his hand. He said he was here to deliver the invitations. His and Isabella's wedding. Sister-in-law should come. His face was still bruised, his brow bone bruised, his face pale and haggard. When he said it, his eyes had an almost self-mutilating mockery in them. "If you're not feeling well, you don't have to come." I took the invitation and looked down at the group photo. He looks at me intently. My hair falls loose, and he subconsciously reaches down to tousle it behind my ear. My hand moves first. The palm of my hand met the back of my hand. I withdraw my hand and say to him, "That's good. Liam, you have your lover and I have mine." Trying to find a trace of strength in my face, he asked, "Don't you hate me?" I couldn't tell the difference in the end. I was just tired and didn't want to see you anymore. But it's all over now. Liam, I didn't realize that I would be the one to say those last 2 words. "I wish you the best of luck as a friend." His eyes were dry. It's hard to hide the disappointment. I smiled softly, "Thank you." He turned his face away from me. I said, "If there's nothing else for you, I'll go in first." "Amanda." He asked casually, "What do you look like in a wedding dress?" I froze. "Liam, it's none of your business." I opened the door and went inside. He tugged on my hand and wouldn't let me go. "How is it none of my business?" His voice was hard. "I was here first." He crouches down off his feet and presses my hand against his forehead. "I was here first. You liked me for 10 years. I don't want to marry anyone else, I just want you. You come back, we start over." The back of my hand felt wet. In all the years I've known Liam, I've never seen him cry like this. I don't know what he's crying about. But I do know that Amanda, 10 years ago, didn't want this bit of late tears from him. She had cried for him countless times before she realized a truth. If tears do the counting, lovers wouldn't be let down. "If I could," I said calmly as I drew back my hand, "I'd rather never have known you. I wish I had known you sooner." Noah said to me suddenly as he watched me rubbing medicine on his arm. "I'll wait for you to get out of class and walk you home. So that you don't have to live too hard on your own." My hand with the swab lurched. Even with my arms and legs, I wrapped my arms around him, and the uneasiness dispersed from my body. I said, "We have many, many more decades." Noah's lips curl up and he leans down to kiss me. He kisses me so hard that I gradually lose my center of gravity. His hands are unruly, and even his breathing becomes confused. He holds me up and lifts me toward the island. At his feet, a dog barked. We both lurched. "Noah," I picked up a stray. In the corner, a small white dog pokes its head out of a box. His eyes were downcast and he smiled for no reason. Reaching out, he pulled down my blouse, wiped the corner of my lips, and tenderly held me in his arms. He said, he used to have a puppy too. What was his name? Eros. That sounds familiar, I said in a flash. That's the name of that private snow park of yours. He misses it. But he couldn't find it. As a teenager, Noah, in an attempt to keep his mind off it, he named the mountain after a puppy. 20-something Noah, on that snow-covered mountain. He couldn't find any trace of me. He made a wish on the mountain of love. Puppy, puppy. Bring her back to me. Then he heard the sound of bells. And extra. Woman only. The morning Amanda left, Liam woke up, and his customary left hand to fish for someone, only to feel the cold comforter. It took 3 minutes for Liam to accept the fact that she was gone. It was nothing. You can leave if you want to, and it's not like it's a relationship you have to be responsible for. He called the movers. Took all her stuff. Piece by piece, eventually empty. That's good. It's good to be out of sight, out of mind. Friends called for drinks. He went. They wouldn't ask about her, and it wasn't exactly a blessed relationship. He was just bored. He went back to the office and worked overtime on his startup project. He wasn't bored anymore. Back home. It's all his stuff. He's used to it. That's good. There's nothing left. It's so comfortable, he falls asleep. Blame it on the pillow. When you close your eyes, it's her voice. Liam, are you comfortable? I picked it out a long time ago. Liam, what are you doing? Liam, when are you coming home? He spent a year. Every night trying to forget her voice. Don't be useless, it's just a woman. But he couldn't get it out of his head. Finally, the night he was rushed to the hospital for sleep deprivation, he got a respite from his coma. His head was finally quiet. The quieter it got, the more he could hear his inner voice. When she comes back, I'll forgive her. So, come back soon. When he woke up, he was sober. He canceled his ticket. He didn't want to hear any more about Amanda. On his last day out of the hospital, he looked through the glass and saw a young couple. The boy had been hit by an electric car. The girl was crying. Her tears flowed, and at some point, Liam remembered Amanda. He thought of how she had taken care of him day and night. She had also cried in such a hurry. At that time, Liam just thought it was funny and asked her, "What's there to cry about?" "I'm fine." Amanda was sobbing. She looked up at him blankly and asked, "I'm fine." Amanda looked up at him blankly and asked, "Who am I to you?" Until this point, Amanda had been good and measured, never pushing him to take responsibility for the relationship. But this time she said, "He brought his cell phone to school on the sly, and plugged in his headphones for me to listen to my idol's new album during study hall at night. If something happens to you, I won't even be able to sign the consent form for surgery." The man in the next bed said, "You're lucky to have a girl who loves you so much." Liam's eyes moved slightly. Liam's eyes twitched, and he reached out to hold Amanda in his arms, who had been crying so hard. After he was discharged from the hospital, Liam said to her, "I'll marry you." He thought Amanda would say yes. But the next day, she was gone. An empty home. Never met another one like her. Then she did come back. She became Noah's wife and had a child of her own. Liam thought it would be nice for him to get married too. He wanted to marry someone he loved 10 years ago, someone better than her. But there was no such person. And she didn't care. Never looked back. It was years after Amanda left that Liam realized one thing. Fail the one who is true. There are no lovers.